Hello, my name is Buelo, and I'm a fourth-year PhD student in environmental sciences.
And my name is Neda Nazemi. I'm a third-year PhD student at Engineering System and Environment.
And this is our presentation for our School of Data Science Presidential Fellowship Project. We have been working on forecasting algal blooms, such as the one that you can see here. Algae are single-celled or colony-forming organisms that convert energy from sunlight into fuel, just like plants do on land. They're a critical part of aquatic food webs, but under certain conditions, like when a lake or reservoir has too many nutrients, they can become overabundant and form blooms. When algal blooms have negative effects, we call them harmful algal blooms. Blooms can cause problems for drinking water, as certain species form toxins that can cause illness or even death if consumed by animals or people. Separate from toxins, algal blooms can also cause fish kills when the algae die and decomposition draws down oxygen to very low levels. Recreation can also be affected, either by toxic blooms or just because no one wants to swim in green, scummy water. For the same reason, increasing abundance of algae also leads to decreases in property values. So all of that explains what algal blooms are and why they're bad, but how does algal bloom forecasting help? Ideally, we treat the underlying problems that cause algal blooms and not have to deal with them at all. However, in many cases, decades of nutrient inputs have made fully avoiding blooms difficult or impossible. We still live by and rely on these water bodies, and in those cases, near-term bloom forecasting could be a practical tool for management. A bloom forecast looks the same as what the weather forecast you see every day look like, except instead of predicting if it's going to be rainy or sunny or cloudy, we are predicting if the water is going to be clear or filled with algae and to what extent. Accurate predictions could give managers time to take actions and do things like preparing water treatment plants, switching water sources, or closing beaches and warning the public that a bloom's on the way. Lots of research has been done on algal blooms, and we understand many of the mechanisms that cause them. However, knowing what causes blooms is not the same as being able to forecast them accurately. For example, we know that nutrients cause blooms, but there are several different ways that nutrients can get into a lake, and measuring them accurately, much less predicting them, is difficult. Weather also plays a role, with different algae species doing better at different temperature, light, and wind conditions. Other components of the food web, such as which zooplankton and fish are present and how many, can promote or suppress a bloom, and these variables are both hard to measure and can change quickly. All of these things interact to determine whether and when a bloom occurs and makes forecasting challenging. Our project focuses on comparing several different forecasting methods to see which provides the best accuracy. We compared 3 modeling approaches to forecasting algal blooms. First is mechanistic modeling, which can be illustrated using conceptual diagrams like these. These models seek to explicitly capture the processes going on in a system. For example, capture the nutrients being taken up by algae, which are then consumed by zooplankton. The boxes and arrows you see can then translate into differential or difference equations like you see here. The second general approach we took was statistical modeling. This approach is different in that it doesn't try to explicitly model the underlying processes, and instead it focuses on identifying patterns in past data and then using those patterns to predict what the future is going to look like. This plot illustrates a hypothetical example of this, and here's an equation for one of the models we used. The final approach we took was deep learning. Deep learning methods such as multi-layer perceptron, convolutional neural networks, and long short-term memory networks can be used to automatically learn the temporal dependent structures for challenging time series problems. Deep neural networks, which power deep learning algorithms, have a set of input units, and that's where the raw data gets fed. They also have several hidden layers in between which help to process and map those inputs to the output nodes. While deep learning techniques often result in more accurate predictions, their highly complex architecture is hard to interpret, and that makes them somewhat of black boxes with just a set of input and outputs. For our study, we focused on 2 data sources from 4 different lakes in the Midwest. This first data set is 3 lakes that the PACE Lab, my research group, have been studying in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. These are small lakes that we conduct fertilization experiments on so that we can study algal blooms in a somewhat controlled manner. The second source of data is a larger lake in southern Wisconsin, Lake Mendota. For this presentation, we're just going to focus on our results from one of the experimental lakes, Peter Lake, which you can see here, for the sake of time. For this lake, we have over 1,000 days of data from 9 summers, including 4 different fertilization experiments.
In all 3 modeling approaches, we trained the models on the historic data from 2008 to 2018 and tested them against the last year, 2019. In this year, one major and several minor bloom incidents were observed. The performance of each model was evaluated based on two measures. First, direct measure of error on all forecasts. We chose root mean square error for this purpose, so RMSE was calculated for each model and for each forecast length from 1 day to 7 days. The performance of each model was compared to the naive or persistence model. For example, for a 7-day forecast, the naive model forecasts algal abundance in 7 days as today's value. Here you can see how error of naive model increases with forecast length, as you would expect, just like weather forecasters are more confident in their forecast for tomorrow than their forecast for 7 days from now. So this naive model serves a baseline to compare against. If a model has a forecast error curve that looks like this red line, where the error is always above the naive model, that would be a bad model. As it does worse than just saying things will stay the same. Compare that with this blue line, which is always lower than the naive. The lower the model's error curve is, the more accurate forecast it provides. Second measure that we evaluated the performance of models was bloom timing. It means how long before the bloom did forecasting models predict that they would happen. It is observable by looking at the actual bloom time series versus time series of the forecast. The first example fits the data well before and after the bloom and has a similar peak height, but it misses the start and end of the bloom, so it is not a good forecast. Now compare that with this forecast. It is a little further off from the real time series before the bloom, but the forecast of the bloom start and end match almost perfectly. We would say this is a good forecast of bloom timing. We applied a suite of different models for all the modeling categories. For the sake of time, I'll just highlight the best in each category. For the mechanistic model, that was the logistic model with constant carrying capacity. As you can see, while forecast error increases with forecast length, the performance improves relative to the naive model at longer forecast lengths. Comparing 7-day forecast of the best mechanistic model with actual values and naive forecast shows mechanistic models are not very strong at predicting the bloom timing. The better performance of the mechanistic model relative to naive on the previous slide is explained by the forecasting from day of year 215 to 230. While the forecast completely misses the timing of start and end of the bloom, its predictions are closer to the actual data during this period than the naive forecast. We also tried several statistical models, of which ARIMA model got the lowest mean square error, especially at longer forecasts. Again, comparing ARIMA forecasts with actual values and naive forecasts, we observed a weak performance at predicting the bloom timing and intensity. Finally, shifting to deep learning approach, we applied various deep learning techniques such as multi-layer perceptron, long short-term memory, convolutional neural nets, and some hybrid models such as CNN LSTM and convolutional LSTM. The results show while almost all of these models are not stronger than naive at short forecast horizons such as 1 day or 2 days, in longer forecast lengths and especially at 7-day forecasting, they significantly improve naive forecasts. As you can see, multivariate, multi-channel convolutional neural net depicts the best performance even in shorter forecast lengths. Moreover, 7-day forecast of this model shows that it performs pretty strong at detecting the bloom timing as well as predicting its intensity during the peak time. In conclusion, we found that deep learning models, and particularly the multivariate convolutional neural net, perform the best at both reducing the forecast error and also predicting bloom timing. In contrast, the mechanistic and statistical models are more interpretable but were not flexible enough to provide accurate forecasts. Our results also show the need to consider both forecast error and bloom timing, as neither alone provides a complete picture of forecast accuracy. We are working on a method to combine these two evaluation measures. Finally, our work also shows the importance of having both data quality and quantity. Across all lakes that we studied, we found forecast accuracy increased with the amount of data and bloom observed. Managers who wish to use bloom forecasting should build monitoring programs that take regular high-frequency measurements of bloom and bloom driver variables. At the end, we would like to take the opportunity to thank the University of Virginia School of Data Science for funding this project. We would also like to thank Professor Michael Pace from School of Environmental Science and Professor Gary Cluey from Engineering Systems and Environment Department for their advice and guidance during this project.